So hamro jab when we talk about pleasure, the way we understand it comes from a very cis-het male perspective. Pleasure and orgasm, you don't need to orgasm all the time. That's another thing. What does sex mean? Penis and vagina?
Hamro dimagma चाहिँ basic idea of sex when I was growing up was, okay, you get married and it's the suhagrat and the guy gets the milk. What? केटीलाई चाहिँ चाहिएन?
अब masturbation के कुरा गर्ने हो भने there's so much of shame कि even when I started masturbating, felt good. But I knew, like, kasto lads lagne ki. For me, my mom found out about my sex toy. I was about to say it's a blackhead remover, but then what if she wants to try it? People with vulvas/vaginas, when they masturbate, oftentimes it's clit stimulation. Also, how can we ensure that our narrative all around pleasure is also very able-body-centric? Okay? So for disabled folks, how does pleasure look like for you, right?
Hello, namaste everyone. Welcome to SEXploration. Ma hu Nishma Choudhary, and this is yet another exciting episode in SEXploration where we are going to talk about sex, pleasure sex, and foreplay for all genders. That's the topic for today. र हामीले SEXploration सुरु गरेका छौं to talk about sexual and reproductive health and rights in our country amongst the youth, especially because we're supported by Yuva and right here, right now. And you can watch us in YouTube channel of Radio Nagarik 96.5 and Facebook page of Radio Nagarik 96.5 again. र आज मसँग सधैँ जसरी नै एकजना गेस्ट हुनुहुन्छ. बेसिकली शी इज एन एक्सपर्ट इज वाट वी क्यान से. तर उहाँले के गर्नुहुन्छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ हामी उहाँबाट नै सुन्नेछौँ. विथ अस वी हेभ अनुज्ञा कुँवर who is SRHR advocate. That's all I'm going to say about her. But definitely she's going to tell us more about the cool work that she does. You guys must listen to. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Nishmati. As I've already been introduced, my name is Anugya Kunwar. Currently, I'm working as an SRHR advocate, but also specifically, I like to call myself a pleasure advocate. And we'll get more into details about what that is. But I had been working with this organization called Choice for Youth and Sexuality, which is a youth-led organization based in Netherlands. And from there, we had to conduct a project of our own. And that's exactly how my project, Feminist Futures Nepal, came into existence. And Feminist Futures Nepal, what we do is we advocate for pleasure-based comprehensive sexuality education. And what that means is we apply pleasure lens to sex education, which is holistic in nature. So we've been conducting various workshops on pleasure, masturbation, talk about a lot of things such as orgasm gap. And these are some of the work that we're doing, and I think we'll talk more about it as this conversation goes.
You know, the first time I heard that, okay, because मैले सोधेँ उहाँलाई तपाईँ के गर्नुहुन्छ, तपाईँको बारेमा अलिकति जानकारी दिनु, and then she said this, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. Why was I unaware of something like this? हुन्छ नि यस्तो पनि हुन्छ, यस्तो पनि गर्न सकिन्छ, यो काममा पनि लाग्न सकिन्छ भन्ने कुरा. किनभने एउटा त सेक्स भन्ने बित्तिकै एउटा त सक्यो, अब यहाँनिर ट्याबु सुरु ट्याब पक के इन माई इमेजिनेसन हुन्छ नि त्यो सुरु हुन्छ नि त, स्पेसली इन द सोसाइटी द्याट we're living in, जस्तो कम्युनिटीमा हामीहरू छौँ होइन. त्यसपछि and then we have someone, you know, young girls like you coming out and talking about pleasure sex and this and that. And I was like, wow, that's so empowering. I know. There's one thing that I really want to say, empowerment ko context ma. Just say jab ma hurkirako थिएँ, युवा नै हो म. I'm 29, I know. I'm not that old. But it's such a gap के यो टेक्नोलोजीले यस्तो भयो. जस्तै म जब म टिनेजर थिएँ तब अनि म सधैँ भन्छु यो सोमा आउँदाखेरि इन्फर्मेसनको एक्सेस कम थियो. अनि खोइ के हो त्यो समयमा चाहिँ एम्पावरमेन्ट, वुमेन एम्पावरमेन्टको कन्सेप्ट भनेको चाहिँ फाइनेन्सियल इन्डिपेन्डेन्सलाई मात्र लिइयो कि होइन. अब आई एम सो ह्याप्पी द्याट we've reached an age like this right now, today, at this moment, where I think, you know, young girls like you and many others understand that the concept of empowerment is very wholesome. I know it's not just about financial independence. It's also emotional independence. It's also how I feel from inside. It's also sexual independence. So sexually flourish by now. Women, as a woman, and that's I can only speak for this gender, the gender that I am. As a woman, एउटा complete feel हुँदैन रहेछ के. Sexual empowerment पनि कति important रहेछ भन्ने कुरा, and the work that you do definitely works on that. So I'm so excited for today's episode. So
here, yeah.
All right, let's talk about sexual pleasure then. No. So, relax, Nishma. Okay. So I think यो show गर्दाखेरि र बेसिक कन्भर्सेसन्सहरू हामीले निकालिसक्दाखेरि चाहिँ हामीले जस्तै मिडियामा कसरी देखाइन्छ सेक्सलाई अथवा सेक्सुअल ओरिएन्टेसनलाई भन्ने कन्सेप्टहरू कुरा गरिसकेका छौँ. साथै हामीले अब मेन स्ट्रिम मिडिया बाहेक जस्तै पोर्न जस्तो कुराहरू हुन्छ अडल्ट इन्डस्ट्रीमा पनि कसरी देखाइन्छ भन्ने कुरा गरिसकेका छौँ. यो सबै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ कसरी चाहिँ सेक्सुअल प्लेजर इन जेनरल त्यसलाई चाहिँ पुरुषहरूको लागि मात्र हो भन्ने कुरा देखाइन्छ भन्ने कुराहरू हामीले अलिकति केही एपिसोडमा गरि पनि सकेका छौँ र सायद बेसिकली सबैले सोची पनि सक्नु भएको छ होला. What are your thoughts on this?
For sure. I think so much पहिला त हाम्रो सेक्स एजुकेसन हुँदैन होइन. So our main source of
हुन्छ नि कहाँ क्लासमा हामीसँग क्लास 6मा च्याप्टर 9 थियो त्यसमा हामीलाई रिप्रोडक्टिभ अर्गान भनेर सिकाइएको थियो.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's
Yeah,
sex
continue,
education.
sorry.
No, that's okay. But again, so existence of sex education एउटा त छैन. भए पनि it's very risk based health focus नि त. So त्यो वेमा जानकारी नै पाइदैन. Then our source becomes media, movies and porn. Again, one thing that comes with this is because the entire conversation then about pleasure or sexual pleasure or what sex means then focuses on a very cis-het male perspective. Okay? Men the men, तर त्यो पनि cis-het के. अब cisgender बना के हो, heterosexual बना के हो भन्दाखेरि cisgender is basically when the sex that you're assigned at birth is similar to your gender identity. For example, I'm a cis woman because the sex that was assigned to me at birth was that of a female and my gender identity is that of a woman. Ani heterosexual is basically being attracted to opposite sex. So hamro jaba when we talk about pleasure, the way we understand it comes from a very cis-het male perspective. So when we talk about sexual pleasure, there's a lot of gender norms that comes into play. For example, in a heterosexual relationship, एउटा त binary-मै कुरा गर्छौँ हामी हैन. Gender as a spectrum त कुरै आउँदैन. We talk about men and women. And त्यो पनि sexual pleasure को कुरा गर्ने हो भने it's like men want sex, they need sex, but sex is done to women. So for us, sex is not something that we're an active agent in, but that's something that's done to us. And this even unfolds in marital relationships where you see how a duty of a wife is to pleasure their partner, their husband.
बुढालाई खुसी राख्ने.
बुढाले खुसी राख्ने, exactly. Which then again negates the existence of marital rape पनि के. So this whole idea of sex then becomes, again, men want sex, women like garidincha. So we don't even talk about that. And because of that, where do we get to talk about pleasure for women or people who have been socialized as women, right? And as we said, like हुन्छ नि pleasure एकदमै cis-het male-centric हो. I'll ask you a question. What does sex mean? Penis and vagina?
Yeah, I mean, all this while you're saying this, it is only for cis-het men, cis-het men. Why does it sound like a riddle? So, त्यो भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ मैले खालि यति सोचेको जस्तै बेसिक आइडिया मैले अहिलेसम्म पाएको अफ सेक्स अहिले त होइन हैन बच्चा बेलामा आफू हुर्किने क्रममा भनौँ while I was like in my early teen was how they give a glass of milk in Suhagrat, because Suhagrat is the only time you get to have sex now. That's the only way you can. त्यो भन्दा अगाडि you cannot. So त्यो बेला a glass of milk for the man.
Yeah.
Only.
Exactly.
हैन? So मेरो दिमागमा त्यही मात्र चलिरहेको थियो के जस्तै मैले हाम्रो दिमागमा चाहिँ basic idea of sex when I was growing up was okay, you get married and it's the Suhagrat and the guy gets the milk.
Yeah.
What? केटीलाई चाहिँ चाहिएन? हामीलाई पनि त्यो चाहियो. I don't know. That's actually for energy, हैन? त्यो energy को रूपमा दिएको हो त हैन? Because the guy needs the energy. I don't know, girl doesn't or whatsoever.
There's that idea, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So men are the initiators, the doers, and we just receive sex. And it's not just for us, but it's for their pleasure. So I think so much of the understanding, like how sex or rape is used as like a form of oppression or violence for women. Like त्यो वेमा मात्र equate गरिन्छ नि त. So as I asked you, what is sex? Idea नै हाम्रो penis and vagina. When does sex end? When a man comes in a heterosexual relationship, right? So much of our understanding becomes this. Pleasure भन्ने बित्तिकै केटाको pleasure, and त्यसपछि sex भन्ने बित्तिकै penis and vagina. Now what this does is, not only does it narrow the definition of what pleasure looks like, but it also marginalizes queer experiences, but also a lot of conversations then centers around abled bodies, disability ko kura pani आउँदैन हैन. So the whole narrative then just centers around cis-het male-centric. So I think यो हरु वेमा चाहिँ it's really important to challenge what pleasure means, what sex means to us, and I believe it's something that's really subjective.
So या डेफिनेटली इन्क्लुसिभ त छैन हिसाबले सोच्ने भने बिकज मैले अहिलेसम्म चाहिँ खालि सेक्सुअल ओरिएन्टेसनको पर्सपेक्टिभबाट सोचिरहेको थिएँ बट यु अल्सो इन्क्लुडेड डिसेबिलिटिज एन्ड अल सो जतिसुकै इन्क्लुसिभ हुन चाहे पनि आफ्नै दिमागले नै आफूलाई सानो बनाउँछ नि त and it has largely to do how it was put in my head. And of course people like you do a lot of work to you know, I don't know if that's the word, debunk all the theories that we've been fed so far. So how do you generally go out and tell people what pleasure is? How do you do that?
I think before that, I just noticed something that you said. You mentioned about how it's in your head, right?
Yeah, it is.
But I think it's not hamro individual flaws. Us thinking about sex in a certain way is not hamro fault. It is a systemic flaw of our education system, our society. It sort of has imprinted on us. In terms of how I talk about pleasure, I think it's been quite a journey because, again, it's really important to contextualize the conversation. So त्यसको लागि चाहिँ सोसाइटी कुन चाहिँ सोसाइटीमा कोसँग कसरी बोलिरहेको छ एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण आइपुग्छ हैन For me specifically it has really helped being out there on Instagram because that has really helped me reach out to youths. So one thing that I've really realized is we lack spaces to talk about this. Youths have always been curious. It's just that we haven't gotten the spaces to find credible information. But in terms of also like sharing our experience, even that's important, right? So I think Instagram has really helped me reach out to that community. And that's how we talk about youth sangade, it's easier, you know. But in terms of, again, family, how do you talk about premarital sex? How do you like make your mom understand what masturbation is?
You don't.
You don't? But I've had those conversations as well.
I mean, yeah, I'm so sorry I stopped you, but while you said this, how do you talk about masturbation with your mom? I'm like, woo.
It's another level of conversation.
I'll never be able to.
I get you. I think for me, my mom found out about my sex toy.
Oh,
so that was another. So that was another conversation that's right there.
No, but let's continue with that.
Let's continue with that. She found it, and so she asked me what it was. And my thing was, do I lie or do I tell her? I was about to say it's a blackhead remover, but then what if she wants to try it? That would be disgusting. So I told her it's a sex toy. And she was like, what's that? I knew she figured it out, but she was like, what's that? And I was like, you know, you use it for masturbation. And she's like, what's that? And I was like, hasta maithunko lagi. Aba Nepali ma. Trying to explain it to her. And she was like, ta biya garre ke?
Turling.
I was like,
Turling. Did that happen? Did that happen?
Like, I could hear that, honestly.
I can really imagine it. Turling.
Yeah.
Turling. Get married.
Exactly. So त्यसपछि she didn't talk to me for a few days. I sort of like try to explain हुन्छ नि I get where your discomfort comes from because that's the society that you grew up in. But it's normal. Then a lot of myths पनि came about how masturbation is unhealthy and everything. So I tried to explain it to her. She didn't talk to me for like a few days. Now we joke about it. It's chill, but then it's a very uncomfortable conversation, which I completely get as well, But it's also something that's natural that needs to be talked about. But then again, depends on how open your parents are as well, But that was one of my experiences.
But I think it's also about that particular experience was probably your gate. And then it just opened.
Yes.
And now you can joke about it.
Exactly.
I mean, I haven't had these kind of conversations with my mother, but I've realized that in life, in general, we all have these small checkpoints. Checkpoints. So game khela checkpoints. So I consider these as checkpoints. Like sometimes you just have this awkward conversation. They get mad. You get embarrassed. You get nervous.
Yeah.
And then it's just smooth after that. You know, you just carry that with you, and that just becomes त्यो नै एउटा ब्राउनी पोइन्ट्स जस्तो हुँदै जान्छ क्या त्यो चेक पोइन्टमा जे भयो जे एक्सपिरियन्स भयो नराम्रो भयो नराम्रो भयो योर मम डिडन्ट स्पिक टु यु वाट एभर ह्यापन बट यु वर्कड इट आउट एन्ड देन यु गो फर्दर एन्ड एभ्रिथिङ बिकम्स भेरी नर्मल आफ्टर द्याट यु नो एन्ड इन लाइफ आई रियलाइज द्याट ह्यापन्स विथ योर पेरेन्ट्स स्पेसली बिकज अफ द जेनेरेसन ग्याप अनि इट्स नट देयर फल्ट एज वेल त्यसले गर्दाखेरि पनि सो या वी वर टकिङ अबाउट समथिङ एन्ड देन यु सेड सेक्स टोय एन्ड आई जस्ट गट सो एक्साइटेड अबाउट इट
I sort of lost my chain of thought as well. Yeah, exactly.
So let's
how do I talk about pleasure?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think again, so मेरो भाषा ने न कसरी बोल्छु premarital sex के कुरा भयो हैन. So how do you in a society that considers premarital sex, especially for individuals who have been socialized as women, as something that's sinful हैन, त्यो वेमा चाहिँ pleasure को कुरा कसरी गर्ने? So I think it just sort of like, contextualizing who you're talking to. कसरी चाहिँ लाग्न सकिन्छ, कुन चाहिँ शब्दहरूको प्रयोग गर्न सकिन्छ. यो चाहिँ something that you really need to calculate and put yourself out there. But one thing that's been there, people have been receptive to this conversation because people know that this is a part of your life. It's just that we haven't gotten the space. Okay? So how do you create that space is something that we need to work on also.
So, what kind of crowd do you talk to? I mean, you said you're more comfortable in Instagram. I'm also very comfortable in Instagram. I love the crowd in Instagram.
Yeah,
Suddenly, Instagram is just like my place, like people understand what I'm trying to say. They criticize you, but they do it in a right way.
Yeah.
Other platforms are just not my thing.
Yeah.
So, I understood that you do that. But in person, when you do it, what kind of crowd do you go to? Is it just the urban crowd, or do you also go to the rural areas of Nepal?
Yeah, I think one of the limitations that has been of our work, and also it's because we just started out, is that it's been very Kathmandu-centric. Okay? We did conduct hamro workshop, ani focus group discussions, but it's mostly urban crowd. But again, because we lack sex education, starting from here, there is a need here, Paniki. It's just that we need to ensure that our conversation is just not limited to this crowd. But oftentimes, hamro aba Kathmandu ke kura garदाखेरि चाहिँ our people are, it's mostly youths, so 18 plus. So we've had mostly people from 18 to 30 ko age group ma. Ani we've done a lot of different workshops, and one workshop that I really love doing is called Laj, deconstructing pleasure. So what that is basically we talk about, especially this is for women and vulva owners or non-binary folks, right? So what we do is we talk about vulva pleasure. So hamro, because so much of talking about vulva or vagina pleasure is, I'm using vulva and vagina interchangeably, they're not the same, but so much of vulva and vagina pleasure is so tabooed in our society. I myself have been like Google ma, how do I masturbate, even though I had been masturbating. So what we do with this is like we sort of deconstruct the whole idea, the guilt and shame that comes with masturbating, and then we discuss the techniques of self-pleasure. How can we touch ourselves? And the interesting ideas that we've gotten out of these workshops. And so we share how we masturbate. It's just been amazing. So this is the workshop that I really love. You should join us, actually.
I like the glow in your face when you
I know,
say,
I get really...
You share techniques. There's a technique? Wow. I would love to know about it. Sorry,
sure.
Papa.
Yeah.
We're just going to ignore. We're just going to pretend that our parents are not going to watch this.
Yeah. Not sending them the link. No.
No, you just don't share it in Facebook. This is for Instagram crowd.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was about to ask something and I forgot because I reached home with this conversation.
Yeah.
All right, give me a sec. Okay? Yeah, okay. So, you seem to have a lot of idea about sex, gender, sexuality, body, and how you touch yourself. You said that.
Yeah.
I have realized, and I think I shared about this series अघि भर्खरै पनि मैले अघि भर्खर पनि भनेको थिएँ हैन त्यो सिरिज हेर्दाखेरि पनि मैले कति रियल लाइफ क्यारेक्टर्सहरुसँग रिलेट गर्न सक्छु के and that is how अनि योलाई मैले केसँग कनेक्ट गर्न चाहे भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ how we do not realize that sexual activity in general is also for your emotional well-being, for interpersonal, intrapersonal पनि आफू self relation को लागि पनि हैन एउटा relation with self. त्यसपछि if you have a partner with the other person, and then again emotional पछि physical, physically pani how your body becomes so frozen if you do not explore yourself. Your context, your kura ta there's nowhere. Then again mental well-being, which is connected with both physical and emotional. It's my social perspective. I'm just trying to explore the side where our relationships with ourselves and with our partners is linked with this particular thing. Is there anything you want to say?
For sure. I think one thing that we really need to understand, especially because like sexuality is so demonized in our society outside of like marital relationship. Marital ko to aba arke conversation bhayale na. But I think it's really important to understand that sexual well-being is an integral part of your overall well-being. And again, researchers have shown that how there are a lot of physical benefits of it as well. Now, I'm not going to go into the scientific details of it because that's not my expertise, but researchers show that in terms of like stress release, or for some people like anxiety, to sleep well, also like as a form of exercise, sexual well-being is really important. But more importantly, I think something that I can can emphasize on is how much sexual well-being helps you explore yourself and embody your own pleasure and be connected to your body. Okay? Because our society keeps us away from our bodies, especially as people who have been socialized as women. Our bodies are not for us to touch. Okay? It's for others to get pleasure out of, right? So I think so much of sexual well-being and exploring that helps us connect to our bodies, and it helps us understand hamro needs ke ho, hamro pleasure ke ho, but also understand our boundaries. And if we want to engage the same thing with partners, partner or partners, so you would say we can sort of like expand it with our partners. So that really helps us like connect with ourselves, create that relationship with ourselves, but also expand it to relationship around us. So to know your pleasure, to communicate that, to know or understand and listen to all your partner's pleasure and their needs sort of really helps you create that emotional intimacy, which can be really fulfilling, right? Having said that, what I do want to emphasize on is that emotional intimacy ko lagi sexually involved partner sanga bhane pani chaina. There are a lot of different ways as from which you can like establish that emotional intimacy pani, especially for example for folks who are asexual. For them, emotional intimacy can look very different. Or for people who don't want to engage in sexual relationship with their partners, does not mean that emotional intimacy create gonna chainchani. But then again, if both of you are on the same page and if you want to explore emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy, it can be a very wholesome experience for both of you to understand each other, but also to understand ourselves.
I think यो कन्टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ कस्तो भन्दाखेरि हामीले अब पहिला न चाहिँ I really feel like now I try to understand things. So we do not realize that our relationship with us is more important. It's really important that you first know yourself emotionally, mentally, and physically. Ahileको contextमा किनभने we're discussing a lot about masturbation, sexual pleasure, and all that. Even physically, it's very important that you understand yourself, and then that eventually can. त्यसपछि त हो नि कम्युनिकेसन आउने भने पहिला आफूभित्र कम्युनिकेट गर्नु पर्यो नि त अनि त्यसमै कति धेरै स्टिग्मा छ जस्तो लाग्छ के मलाई.
True. I think like this is what like because the workshop that we've conducted, we start off with hamro relationship with ourselves, relationship with our pleasure, and oftentimes, and I felt it personally, pani the guilt and shame that comes with it, because about masturbation ke kura गर्ने हो भने there's so much of shame. Even when I started masturbating, felt good, but I knew like कस्तो लाज लाग्ने हुन्छ नि के नराम्रै गरे भगवानले अब पाप लाग्छ मलाई त्यही त कस्तो हुन्छ नि. अनि one thing that I really want to again like highlight is yes, like we need to understand our own bodies, and if we have not been able to do it, it's not because of us. Again, going back to systemically it's been taken away from us. हामीलाई त्यो नलेज दिएको छैन उल्टै shame, guilt सबै दिएको छ हैन. So don't feel guilty about not knowing about your body. We're all in our own journeys हैन, but just keeping yourself out there, being open to things. Maybe masturbation is not your thing. That's completely understandable. Sexual empowerment doesn't mean you have to be sexually active. It's just making informed decision about your sexual life, about your sexuality.
Oh, that's a lovely thing you said.
So
sexual empowerment is not about being sexually active. It's about
making informed choices. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
That'd be like the quote of the episode or whatsoever. I don't know for everyone, but for me it would be. That's actually very empowering.
Awesome.
Please continue.
Yeah, I think like mainly I said this was because I've been having a lot of conversation with youth, right? A part of hammer society is against premarital sex. A part is like going through the casual sex relationships, sex positive hune bittikai we have to have sex huncha ni, when you know that it's not serving you, and also the whole feminist analysis of casual sex and how it caters to again heterosexual relationship to the man. He comes over huncha ni. So in terms of that, there's a lot of that. So just making informed decision is what really must like it needs to be highlighted, and also that it's not our fault. It's our failed systems that they really fail us in terms of like educating us about our own bodies.
Yeah. I'd actually agree with that. I mean, I can listen to you for such a long time. So like, please you have such nice way of explaining things. So definitely I try to connect a lot of things to myself because why not? I don't know about a lot of people and their sex life or their bodies. So for years, I'm trying to connect this with masturbation because again, we're talking about our relationship to ourselves. You said shame and guilt. what I've realized is in our generation, it's not about shame or guilt. It's about a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's about a vacuum. I don't know if I can explain it in words, okay? So it's about a vacuum considering how masturbation was not even a word for women.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you know? The gender that I am, त्यो र masturbation सँगै जाँदै जाँदैन भनेपछि त त्यो vacuum छ मेरो लागि त्यो shame र guilt भन्ने छैन क्या त्यहाँ from my perspective हैन
I get you. हजुर.
shame त गरे पनि हुन्छ guilt त गरे पनि हुन्छ गर्ने हो गर्नुपर्छ भनेर थाहा नै छैन भने त केही पनि छैन that's like an empty cup. So that is also one perspective that I don't see a lot of people bringing out there.
I think this just reminds me of Bacha Bela. We used to play this game. Never have I ever been Nikki. So once I always talk about this because it just reminds me of that. So mixed sex group we were playing Never Have I Ever, and Exana goes like Never have I ever masturbated. Banana Ketaru proudly they're like drinking and everything, and Katie are like, I mean gardenam khali ki. But personally for me, I didn't drink as well. But I was masturbating. But also depends, what do you define as masturbation? For a long time for me, I used to Google, how do I masturbate? Because I thought whatever I was doing wasn't masturbation. Which again goes back to how masturbation is seen through a male gaze. Let me like sort of unpack that in. For example, mere personally whenever I used to masturbate, things that I did would be like touching myself down there or humping on things. But I thought that was not masturbation because mera idea and also porn became a very huge part of me learning what masturbation means is finger chiraera, that's how you masturbate.
Penetration.
Penetration, exactly, right? But penetration is not what only comprises of masturbation, right? It could look like humping on a sofa. That works as well. So for me, I thought that the way I was masturbating wasn't masturbation. This is research garte, but then again, I realized how penetration centric our whole idea of sex is, of masturbation is. Because again, researchers show that when people with vulvas/vaginas, when they masturbate, oftentimes it's clit stimulation, and there are only certain group of vulva owners who orgasm through penetration alone. So clit stimulation ko ta kurai chaina. That's not masturbation. Penetration idea. So I think for me, it was a journey to just I was like, okay, whatever I was doing as a kid was masturbation, and nobody gets to define it for me.
I actually need some time to sink in whatever she said, I know. And every time she says something, it just comes to me, okay, okay, and there's a map in my head, whatever, right? Yo bhaniराख्दाखेरि चाहिँ मलाई एउटा कुरा एकदमै feel हुन्छ के. So we're in this time where our identity एकदमै spotlight ma cha, okay? Especially as a woman who generally likes to speak out and look very intimidating like me. I know, let's just categorize, okay? So identity kosto bhandakheri, okay, there's gender pronoun there, okay? How do you identify? She, her. What about your professional life? Okay, I'd like to be introduced as media personality. Are you a feminist? Euta ideology categorize garna thalyo हैन. And slowly, all the conversation that when I got into media, it wasn't as open as it is now. Fortunately, it's very cool now. So back then, when I just entered, and there was a lot of confusion around, for me, myself, that whether or not I would like to identify as a feminist.
Yeah.
There was like a group of people who constantly told me that, oh, Nishma, feminist हुनु हुँदैन है, feminist रहेर त केटाहरुलाई sex गर्न दिदैन रे भनेर के. This is one very important point that I wanted to talk about all of a sudden. I don't know why. But it's very important here, I think, in this context, because over the time, what I realized about why they were seen as women who wouldn't allow men to have sex.
I see where you're going.
Yeah. And now I realize, okay, I think this happened back then, or people think it like this. People have perceived people with certain ideologies as difficult to have sex with, is because they're sexually aware.
Exactly. You know what your needs are. Yeah.
And they may just be difficult for them. Oh, you know? Okay, hey, I'm not happy.
Yeah, this is
This
not
is
working.
what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, please do this for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I realized only very late.
Yeah.
Back then it was such a tough time, you know. We're all in our journey, like you said, you know. अब त्यो बेला त मेरो लागि त्यो सेक्सुअलिटीको कन्टेक्स्टमा पनि आएको होइन क्या फेरि खालि फेमिनिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिभबाट do I identify as a feminist or not? I always go back to those kind of conversations. त्यो रिलेटेड किन थियो? म त काम गर्न आएको थिएँ होइन, बट यु ह्याड सो मच प्रब्लम विथ त्यो फियर क्या. ओके यो पनि अब यो जान्छे, यो पनि अब फेमिनिस्ट हुन्छ, यो पनि त्यो ग्रुपमा जोइन गर्छ, त्यो टाइपको के होइन. त्यो फियर रहेछ क्या उहाँहरूमा चाहिँ. अब त्यो जान्छे, त्यो उहाँहरूलाई पनि सायद उहाँहरूलाई पनि थाहा भएन. दे डिडन्ट अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड वाट वी आर टकिङ राइट नाउ. बट आई रियलाइज ओके, इफ अ वुमन इज सेक्सुअली अवेयर, इट इज डिफिकल्ट फर यू. That is when you think that, oh, okay, it's the garna diena type.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to like share this story. Have you ever heard these things like as feminist? Okay, you say so huncha bhanera.
Not exactly, but I do sense where it's coming from. And also like I just like picked up on the word difficult, right? This narrative about how again women like say it's difficult to please because our bodies are complicated. It's just that you don't know what to do. Like even like again, कुरा के आउँछ भन्दाखेरि again we need to understand our bodies as well, be able to communicate, but also how much of heterosexual relationship ma do you center the woman's pleasure? Okay. Ani again the clit is ignored. I would like to explain the term vulva or vagina because I think it's just really important, because one of the thing is like language ko jun kura garsam ni हामी, language creates reality and it also describes reality ki. So for example, school book ma पढ्दाखेरि पनि we've always been calling हाम्रो genitalia vagina, right? But the actual term is vulva. So vulva is basically the external genitalia that we see for people who have been assigned female at birth. So हामीले जुन labia, inner outer labia, or some clitoris, some urethras out where we pee from, and even the vaginal opening is the vulva. So जे हामी vagina भनेको छ नि, is actually the vulva. The vagina is just the vaginal opening and the vaginal canal where penetration occurs, fingers, tampons, where the blood comes from for menstruating individuals, right? So the whole idea that clit is so central to our pleasure, which is vulva ma, but हाम्रो language चाहिँ के छ भन्दाखेरि vagina. The existence of vulva in our language does not even exist, which points towards that how vagina लाई चाहिँ हामी center मा राखिरहेको छौँ, which then points towards how penetration is important. So vagina लाई focus गर्न बित्तिकै we focus on penetration, we focus on reproduction के. So how हाम्रो language मा नै अब हाम्रो भन्दाखेरि इङ्ग्लिसकै कुरा गरिरहेको छ अहिले होइन, but नेपालीमा पनि vagina भनेर नै हामी भनिरहेको हुन्छौँ होइन. So how that Yoni, that's another word that's used as well. So I think the language focuses on penetration, okay? And that's important to challenge because clit becomes a very important part of vulva owners' pleasure, and that's not existent in our language at all, and the terms that we use.
I'm just going back to school again where they taught us your reproductive part and this and that.
Yeah. Vulva the thiye thina ni.
I don't remember.
I don't think it was there.
Is it? Is that why I don't remember it?
I'm not sure, but I don't recall learning the word vulva. Okay? It's something that recently that I learned about as well.
I forgot the picture, man. So sad. I mean, that was important question. 5 marks ko आउँथ्यो नि त.
Yeah.
सम्झिनु पर्ने हो नि मैले. ठीक छ. केही छैन. We'll just get back to the topic again.
Yeah.
So, we've been talking so much about women pleasure here. I think because mostly मेरो साइडबाट त्यो पर्सपेक्टिभ आउँछ जस्तो लाग्छ कि त्यो त मेरो लागि भयो होइन, मैले यति गरेको एनालिसिस मेरो लागि भयो. एन्ड वाट एभर यु बिन सेङ, अफकोर्स इट कम्स फ्रम द पर्सपेक्टिभ अफ समन हु एजुकेट्स पिपल इन दिस पर्टिकुलर कन्टेक्स्ट. But there is a section which may not identify as अब के भन्ने the queer community basically, जसको identification चाहिँ मसँग सायद म्याच नगर्ला होइन. And then मलाई as a woman नै होइन, and यति underrepresented feel हुन्छ when it comes to this context, right? So, how अहिले भर्खर पनि when you said okay vulva this that the whole reproductive organ this and that, त्यो त एटलिस्ट मेरो लागि त त्यति भए पनि छ भन्ने भयो कि मलाई होइन. This is whole community whose sexual orientation is first not accepted. is very
Marginalized.
disrespected, not regarded as existent. त्यसपछि अब सेक्सुअलिटीको कुरा झन् कहाँ नै गइहाल्यो होइन. How do you educate them? Do you have any workshop for them? What kind of problems do you see? Let's get into that context
For
as well.
sure. I think like the thing about pleasure is we can have conversations around it. We cannot educate people because it's such a personal journey, right? Pleasure for me might not look the same as you. Again, our identities also play a huge role in how we define pleasure, how we experience pleasure. For example, for, again, asexual community ko lagi, pleasure will be very different from how pleasure is for me. So one thing that we really do with our workshops is, and we've just been focusing on, for workshops specifically, vulva owners ko lagi matra garachham haina. But in terms of discussions that we have, because again, for me who advocates for pleasure, I come from like a cis woman perspective, right? So त्यो भएको कारणले चाहिँ there's a lot of perspective that I wouldn't know. So for trans people, how does that look like? So हाम्रो main thing that we really do is like have group discussions. So for a trans person, how does your relationship with your body is? How do you communicate that with your partners? How does sex look like for you? For example, in queer relationships, in a queer relationship, basically, how do you define pleasure? And I think it's really important, and I think we talked about this as well, like how we say a foreplay bhaneko, like so and sex is penetration, right? How does sex look like in a queer relationship? In same-sex relationship, how does sex look like? Right? Because the thing is, we've been handed this script about sex ki यस्तै गर्नुपर्छ, यस्तै गरे पनि राम्रो हुन्छ, and this is how you should do it. But again, it's very political because that then caters to the dominant group, cis-het men, cis people, right? Ani queer folks khoi kaha cha the conversation haina. So again, I really don't like the term foreplay ke? Because what is foreplay? What foreplay might mean to you is sex for me with my partner, and that's as valid as your penis and vagina sexual activity that you do, right? So I think one thing that's really important to talk about pleasure, and I'm in the process of it as well, I'm not an expert. I've just been part of many conversations, have facilitated these conversations. But it's so important to understand how pleasure looks like for intersex folks, how pleasure looks like for trans community, trans women, trans men, non-binary folks. How does it look like for a broader community? But also, how can we ensure that our narrative around pleasure is also very able-body-centric? Okay? So for disabled folks, how does pleasure look like for you, right? So just expanding that narrative of pleasure. Okay? How can we make pleasure trauma-informed so that, because like sexual assault survivors, the way you experience pleasure can be very different. So how do we challenge that script that we have given? Okay? So our main aim with our project has been redefining what pleasure means. And it's just creating that our own narratives, our own scripts with ourselves, but also if we want to share it with others, partners. So I think it's mostly keeping that conversation going and ensuring that sometimes whenever you facilitate a conversation, you come from your own social positionings. So you can be an active listener than just भन्नलाई सिकाउनलाई, because आफ्नै त मेरो सिकाउने कुरा त मेरो एक्सपिरियन्सबाट आउँछ नि त. सो त्यो एक्सपिरियन्सलाई कसरी हामीले broaden गर्न सक्छौं is something that's really important, especially when you work in something as subjective as pleasure. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing I want to add in this context, but when I was listening to you, a lot of times I feel like, I'm so marginalized when it comes to representation. अब यो sexual representation को हिसाबले पनि, sexuality को representation को हिसाबले पनि हैन. But I still feel like right now I'm sitting in a couch and I'm having this conversation so openly that I have this privilege of sitting and talking about this. I know. I am a Choudhary, I am a Tharu, I come from Tarai, अनि म धेरै जान्छु उता, अनि म एकदम relate गर्छु मेरो rootsसँग, and I sit and think about women there. Just in general. And it just happened to me right now while I was talking to you, while I was listening to you. I can listen to this and maybe I can say, okay, I am in my own journey of pleasure. But I know back there, they don't have this.
I think we have this idea that these other women don't have this, but I think it's just that the language, the way pleasure is seen is different. Because I'm pretty sure it's there. तर कस्तो देखिन्छ म पनि धेरै भन्न सक्दिनँ because I've not been outside of Kathmandu often, but I'm pretty sure it's existent. but how do you contextualize it? How is it shown? Because I remember हाम्रो feminist futures Nepal and feminist futures India पनि छ कि अनि my colleague, she worked in rural areas India ma ki, and what she said was like usle urban and rural area compare garदाखेरि, and I'm talking about her because मेरो experience छैन त्यसमा हैन. So she mentioned how these women were more open to talking about sex, pleasure, than what she found in urban areas. So I think there's a lot of more research and conversation that needs to happen that goes beyond Kathmandu matre, but I'm pretty sure pleasure exists in all of our lives. It's just that the bhasha, the way we see it, might be different, but it is equally there. Just लाग्छ मलाई चाहिँ.
I would like to believe that it wouldn't make me so sad all of a sudden, and it wouldn't trigger me this way. But all the examples that I've seen and all the conversations that I've seen, more than often they're not even allowed to choose the number of children they have. I know my grandmother, she had 8 children, 9 children. They were like miscarriages, I think. I don't know if I should tell her story, but more than often they're not even allowed. We had a house help. She's from Madhes herself, and she has 4 children. She had 2 miscarriages by the time she was 21. She had all the children by the time she was 21. She was married at the age of 16. She doesn't have the uterus now. She had to like throw it. अनि यो सबै कन्टेक्स्टमा यसो हेर्दाखेरि यो पनि रिप्रोडक्टिभ हेल्थ भयो नि त.
For sure.
100% भयो नि हैन. Though I would like to say, okay, we're talking about pleasure, sex, and this and that, but eventually, for a larger group, it is also about reproduction.
Yes.
I wouldn't say it is only about reproduction.
It's a part
also,
of it.
It's a part of it. Important part of it, considering the species that we are. I know reproduction is a very important part. त्यो connected छ नि त हैन. And if they do not have that kind of choice and control over their body, something that will not even be seen as important, pleasure, उहाँहरुको pleasure, उहाँलाई कस्तो महसुस भइराछ भन्ने कुरा त important पनि छैन नि त. So that is something that made me say what I said just now.
Yeah, no, that's a very important point, because oftentimes our bodies are policed, अनि त्यसले गरेर just lack of knowledge, but also like not having control. As you said, like even reproduction ko lagi, we might not have that decision over ourselves, right? So I think that's a very important perspective indeed. Not even a perspective, it's a reality that exists, right? And I think so much of work, that's why, is important, because pleasure is our basic human right. And we all need pleasure. No matter, like, it might look different for us, but how do we ensure that we emphasize on pleasure being a need? And it's a part of our basic human right. But again, this is a conversation that needs to go beyond certain elite spaces of Kathmandu pani. That's something that I've recognized with the conversations that I've had as well. But it's a process, and I think it's really important to see, like, contextually, we can take this conversation forward. We can emphasize on pleasure, but also talk about a lot of reproductive health issues pani regarding that.
Yeah, of course. It just took me, it just made me so sad all of a sudden. I'm so sorry. So we were talking about foreplay and how we do not like the word.
Yes.
Let's get back to that, and let's get back to the track, right? So you said you do not like fore. So why I had this यो topic मैले पिक गरेर चाहिँ अनि यो एउटा कन्टेक्स्ट ल्याउनुको रिजन चाहिँ कारण चाहिँ के भन्दाखेरि मेरो एउटा साथीको साथी है, अनि त्यसपछि उहाँले आफ्नो कथा सेयर गर्दाखेरि कहिलेकाहीँ हामी कम्फर्टेबल हुन्छौँ अनि हामी कथा सुनाउँछौँ, आफ्नो मनमा भएको कुराहरू सुनाउँछौँ, अनि उहाँ चाहिँ आफ्नो सम्बन्धबाट खुसी हुनुहुन्न थियो. अनि किन हुनुहुन्न थियो भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ उहाँलाई शारीरिक सम्पर्क राख्दाखेरि एकदमै दुख्छ भनेर भन्नुभयो कि. अनि सेल्फिस सेक्स भन्छौँ हामी त्यसलाई चाहिँ. कस्तो भन्दाखेरि उहाँको पार्टनरले चाहिँ एउटा महिलाको शरीर कसरी काम गर्छ अनि मैले शारीरिक सम्पर्क राख्ने क्रममा चाहिँ पहिला उसलाई कस्तो महसुस गराउनु पर्छ अनि कस्तो तरिकाले म गएँ भने चाहिँ अनि बल्ल उसलाई सजिलो हुन्छ, बेसिक एउटा नदुख्ने हिसाबले, त्यो पनि याद नगर्ने हैन. So that is where I think I wanted to talk about foreplay. I'm so sorry I brought up the word you do not like so much. I'd like to apologize on behalf of the entire team of Yuva and RHRN for having this. But that's there for at least the kind of, sexual orientation that she is and sexuality that she has. त्यसको लागि त छ नि त त्यो part important छ. So there are these kind of things as well. Okay. मलाई खालि यो एउटा share गर्नको लागि थियो. Is there anything you want to add? You're writing already, making notes.
No, for sure. I think it's about पहिला त हाम्रो society मा we don't talk about sex. Education पनि छैन. What we get, हाम्रो main source, we even did a survey अनि 50% भन्दा माथि नै हाम्रो like people were like our source of sex education was porn. अनि mainstream porn मा the way sex is shown is very violent, it's very centric to the male gaze. Women are like objectify गरिरहेको हुन्छ. अनि even in queer sex that's been shown is through a very fetishizing रूपमा हुन्छ नि त. It's not how it looks like, right? So I think so much of this lack of knowledge le gardakheri there's lack of consent and pleasure communication in relationships. Okay? So what do you like? What do you would like me to do? Or the communication is important, right? Because as we talked about, if both the partners, heterosexual relationship, both the partners come from a space of ignorance, lack of knowledge, ignorance, how would you pleasure your partner? Like, the bodies are different, right? So, कसै थाहा पाइन्छ नि त. त्यसको लागि त मलाई यो मन पर्छ भन्न सक्नु पर्यो. त त्यसको लागि चाहिँ आफ्नै बडीलाई पहिला जान्नु पर्यो नि त, हैन? So, because there's so much of lack of लजाउँछ पनि, like हुन्छ नि, the guy, again there's this whole idea that the man should know in a heterosexual relationship, the man should know कसरी pleasure गर्ने भनेर. So a lot of also that comes to like how do we communicate about it, okay? Also like communicate not how होला हैन, but how do we create that safer spaces for both the partners, or how many partners that you're involved with, हैन, to have that conversation, okay? यो मन पर्छ यो भएन. And if your partner is not receptive of that, then it's the partner's fault, and that's red flag right there on your face.
I know.
Yeah.
Red
Run
flag.
away.
You've got to like
waving at you right there.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think communication becomes really important. I'd say.
It does make sense, but then I only 2 years old when I realized, okay, foreplay is not like the best of words. It's not as sexually inclusive. Is what we can say.
Also, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're adding something, say it.
No, just again the same old thing about like what is foreplay. Like oral sex is not foreplay, that is sex. So things like that. Yeah.
I love the kind of conversation we're having here. But still, like even if you would not want this to be, I don't know. I don't know the alternate word for foreplay.
Neither do
okay? But I still say that, okay, it's very important that you talk about this.
Yeah.
The importance of it.
I think, again, like foreplay bhanne bittikai play चाहिँ के हो त, penetration, हैन र? So the whole conversation about like, okay, so clit stimulation is not foreplay. If my pleasure, if I orgasm, again, pleasure and orgasm, you don't need to orgasm all the time. That's another thing, right? But then if I orgasm through clit stimulation, which is just from maybe you touching my clit with your fingers or with your tongue, if I orgasm through that, why is that not sex? Why is only penetration sex? That's not foreplay. Obviously, you need to do things, right? We need to redefine what sex means to us. And I think that can be done with, like, for example, if you're with a partner, how would you define sex for each other? Like, so I think, yes, I think just penetration is not just sex. I think that's
I realize why you don't like the word foreplay now.
That's it.
I just realized.
Yeah.
I'm 2 years old when I realize these kind of things. Thankfully, still a yuva though.
Still a yuva.
So I generally say yuva though, because yuva ma चाहिँ 29 भन्दा मुनिको मात्र युवा मान्नु. So if you're like 29 for the 30, you're like what? You're unyuva. So I'm glad I'm doing this right now while I'm 29. त्यो हुन्छ नि त्यो लिमिटमा पुगेपछि I'm going to do this. So it's just an inside joke within me. Like Nishma, ha 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 ha. You won't be Yuba next year. Ha 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 ha. I laugh at myself. Okay, that's just another thing. So, how do you think we can work on this? Euta ta in terms of जस्तै मलाई नै अहिले पनि when I'm having conversation with you, I realize, okay, there's so many things. कति सिक्ने, कता गएर सिक्ने, हैन? कति धेरै कुरा कसरी सिक्ने यति धेरै एउटा लाइफमा, हैन? बिचारा एउटै दिमाग छ, थाकिसक्यो. सिक्दा थाकिसक्यो मेरो तिमा I cannot anymore. So how do you think we can work on this?
I think working on this comes in different layers. Okay? So one thing that's really important, that's something that's a broader goal of like Feminist Futures Nepal pani, is institutionalization. Okay? So again, because oftentimes as a young like bacha hudakheri हैन, हाम्रो source of information comes from school. Right? We spend a lot of time in school. Parents been bhayo हैन. So if हाम्रो sex education is not there, if it's only risk-based, which means that it only focuses on the risks of sexuality or sex, or if it's not gender inclusive, then हामीले पाएन नि त त्यो knowledge. So it's really important to institutionalize हाम्रो comprehensive sexuality education. Okay? So comprehensive sexuality education भनेको चाहिँ, when we talk about sexuality education, we take a holistic approach to it. Okay? So STIs, STDs को बारेमा कुरा मात्र नगरेर, anatomy को बारेमा कुरा नगरेर, we also talk about gender, we talk about violence, we talk about pleasure, we talk about consent, we talk about bodily changes जुन आउँछ नि age appropriate रूपमा त्यो चाहिन्छ कि. Because education system में आएन भने civil society ले मात्र गरेर सकिदैन कि. There's only certain groups that you can use. So institutional way मा चाहिँ comprehensive sexuality education हुनुपर्छ. But then again, you need to train the teachers as well. Because curriculum मा बनायो, teachers लाई अप्ठ्यारो मान्यो. I remember मेरो HPA class मा teacher नै रातो मुख पारेर she just like read everything out here, and we're like, what is masturbation? हुन्छ नि. So curriculum भएर मात्र भन्यो.
Masturbation भन्ने word थियो?
थियो. Surprisingly, yeah. But
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I do remember that. These are the things I did remember.
You were born to do this. Let's accept.
But
which is so cool.
Thank you. But yeah, so I think like training, sensitization to the teachers themselves is important. But individual level ma chai abo yo ta policy ko level kura ta, it's a gradual process. There are a lot of organizations that are working. UVA is one of them, but also in individual level ma, I think it's just like starting conversations. Easily said than done हैन. गाह्रो हुन्छ, अति गाह्रो हुन्छ. मलाई प्लेजरको बारेमा नेपालीमा बोल्दा नै गाह्रो हुन्छ. So किन भन्दाखेरि त्यो everything comes back कि own education हुन्छ नि त, आफै त्यो shy shame हुनुपर्छ भनेर. So त्यो भाषामा पनि म इङ्ग्लिशमा स्विच गरिहाल्छु कि प्लेजर बारे भन्दाखेरि. So
it's more comfortable.
It's distant कि because नेपाली भाषा त आफ्नो भयो नि त. So त्यो shame guilt आउँछ हैन. But that's something that I'm working on. But I think individual level, it's so important if you can, if you have friends, if you have cousins. We talked to a lot of youths and they said that they usually talk to their partners about this. साथीहरु हैन, कोही साथीहरु. So starting this conversation. If somebody talks about masturbation, उनीहरुलाई ridicule नगर्दिने हैन. So coming from that space, creating those spaces from each other. Because one thing that I've realized with all this work is we are curious, we are sexually active, we just don't have spaces for it. Okay? And one thing that's really important to recognize is when we do not talk about sex, that's when we make it dangerous. Okay? Talking about sex helps us make informed decisions, and at the end of the day, that's important. So I think individual level, that's something that we can do.
So to have informed decision, we need to have firstly हामी institution को माध्यमबाट जानु पर्यो. पहिला स्कुल कलेजेसमा CSE हुनु पर्यो.
I think it's a simultaneous process, थाहा छ? Yeah.
अनि र घरमा पनि त्यो किसिमको कन्भर्सेसन हुनु पर्यो.
Yeah.
सबैजनाले बसेर सेक्स टोयको बारेमा कुरा गर्न आवश्यक छैन हैन. त्यो सबै मान्छे सबैले आफ्नो हिसाबले like you've been saying अब आफ्नो यात्रा हो, आफ्नो हिसाबले सिक्दै जाने हो भन्ने कुरा. तर बेसिक दिन सक्नु पर्यो. जति त्यसलाई क्युरियस बनाए त्यति डेन्जरस हुन्छ कि भन्ने कुरा हो. I think that's when whatever is available, whatever information is available is the whole information for you. For example, the porn. होइन? जस्तै तपाईले घरमा चाहिँ भन्नु भएन अथवा तपाईलाई शिक्षाको माध्यमबाट स्कुलमा विद्यालयमा सिकाइएन भने चाहिँ तपाईले जे देख्नुहुन्छ त्यो नै तपाईको लागि पुरा इन्फर्मेसन भयो. And that is where the whole thing goes wrong. So like I like the content in terms of like अब कन्टेन्टको कुरा गरौँ अनि त्यसपछि maybe I think we'll be able to conclude today's episode. मैले अघि पनि मेकअप रुममा पनि I was talking to you about this new series that I watched अस्ति अनि it's called She. अनि यसलाई I don't know सबैले कसरी हेर्नुहुन्छ. म चाहिँ एकदमै एउटा वुमेनको सेक्सुअल जर्नीमा रिभल्भ गरिरहेको series ko रूपमा हेर्छु it looks like she's becoming a हुन्छ नि undercover cop or something but for me त्यो एउटा layer छ के जुन चाहिँ side by side उसको मात्रै journey छ जुन चाहिँ उसले एक्लै एउटा sexually empowered woman हुने तर्फ ऊ लाग्दैछ बिस्तारै भनौँ न it can be very destructive for her though हैन तर I love that there are these kind of contents that coming out in at least like in Indian market you know Nepalमा त त्यो I don't think we're going to have that anytime soon. Fortunately, we have people like you who are there in, say, you know, fortunately because of the social media, we have people like you who will probably create content so that people who are curious and who have the access will educate themselves. नगर्न सक्नेहरूको लागि अझै पनि डेन्जरसै छ जस्तो लाग्छ.
True. Because again, Instagram advocacy is एकदमै niche crowd कि
एकदमै limited
accessible छैन language भाषा नै accessible छैन नि त so I think त्यो वेमा चाहिँ there's a lot of more work that needs to be done but I just also wanted to add we've been talking so much about cishet men हैन but also because हाम्रो sex education नभएको कारणले there's a lot of pressure on men as well also like the terms of like how should their sexual life look like has been predefined pani ni ta so in a way that you would want to have sex all the time so there's that pressure for men as well tyo pani cha there's this gender role assigned to it so I think that needs to be talked as well so yeah so I just wanted to address that because again at the end of the day it's lack of education त्यो छैन त्यो sex negative approach जुन छ नि that harms all the genders although the impact is disproportionate more so for more marginalized people especially queer community hosts and the broader group but again all genders are affected by it.
Definitely, I think that's a very nice point you came out with. हुन्छ नि केटा भनेको चाहिँ एकदम जुन हिसाबले यसलाई पोर्नमै पनि फेरि देखाइन्छ अग्रेसिभै हुनु पर्यो होइन अनि त्यसपछि एक्सट्रिमली वाइल्ड हुनु पर्यो एकदम म्यास्कुलिन हुनु पर्यो यस्तै हुनु पर्यो अनि बिचारा उसले जे देख्यो उसले त्यही सिक्यो नि त
एक्ज्याक्टली
होइन त्यही कुरा गर्नुपर्छ म केटा एउटा पूर्ण रूपमा म पुरुष हुनुको लागि चाहिँ मैले यही कन्भर्सेसन गर्नुपर्छ मैले यही नै बोल्नुपर्छ मैले केटीहरूको बारेमा यसरी नै बोल्नुपर्छ अनि मैले उसँग एक्लै हुँदा पनि मैले यही नै गर्नुपर्छ त्यो कन्सेप्ट आयो डेफिनेटली त्यो जुन नरेटिभ सेट भएको छ त्यसले चाहिँ पुरुषलाई पनि सिस हेडलाई पनि इम्प्याक्ट पारेको छ उहाँहरूले सिक्नु भएको कुरा रङ हो भन्ने कुरा उहाँहरूलाई भन्ने कोही पनि छँदा पनि छैन अनि त्यसले त्यो फेरि रङ हो भनेर साथीभाइसँग डिस्कस गऱ्यो भने फेरि आफ्नै बेइज्जत होला भन्ने डर होला उहाँ होइन सो देयर इज अ लट अफ इज दिस लाइक टक्सिक म्यास्कुलिनिटी विच इज बिन मेन आर भिक्टिम्स यो कन्टेक्स्टबाट हेर्दा बिचाराहरू एक हिसाबले आई वुड से बिचारा एन्ड इट मे नट साउन्ड राइट बट दे आर जस्ट भिक्टिम्स themselves as well यो context ma herda yeah all right somebody is just saying yes Nishma yes I'm sorry okay I didn't do anything I was born like in same year as you did we're both 29 we won't be Yuva from next year so yeah I mean it's been tough for everyone it's just about narrative that needs to change and hopefully we'll have more discussion on these kind of topics. Is there anything that we've forgotten? Is there anything you want to add?
I think that's about it. I think from my end, it's just highlighting that Hamro project that has been mainly focusing on challenging the cis-het-centric dialogue regarding pleasure, right? But again, a lot more perspective needs to come in. As I said, disabled pleasure kasto dekhincha haina. Also intersex folks like ace community ko lagi pleasure kasto dekhincha. So it's so much more than what we've just tapped into. And this is a lot more work that needs to be done. And yeah, I hope a lot of us communities can come together and like start this conversation. I think that's all from my end. Yeah, that's nice. You said asexuals. I follow this page in Instagram. It's called nepali.asexuals. Yes.
They're pretty nice.
They're really good.
I don't know. They give us sexual memes, and I don't know if it's appropriate for me to laugh. But it's very educating in a way. I mean, they can do it if they belong to the community. It's very. It was very interesting. मलाई कस्तो रियलाइज भयो भन्दाखेरि एलजिबिटिआइक्युए भित्रै पनि कति अन्डर रिप्रेजेन्टेड कम्युनिटिज भयो भन्ने कुरा फिल हुन्छ क्या त्यो हेर्दै जाँदाखेरि बट देन अगेन कति सिक्ने अब यो कति सिक्ने भन्ने कुरा पनि छ क्या फर पिपल लाइक अस एन्ड सो विड बी भेरी इन्ट्रेस्टेड टु नो एन्ड लर्न but then again it's a very difficult task so yeah it was a really wonderful conversation thank you so much I had a really nice time I would really say this is one of the best episodes so far. I think I like your earrings. That's it.
Yeah. That's political right there.
Yeah. That is what made the whole episode nice. Okay. All right. So yeah, that was a really nice conversation. I feel so good about the conversation that we had right now, and I hope that the audiences will have their own perspective. यहाँहरुको दिमागमा के छ भने चाहिँ कमेन्टमा लेख्नु होला. मैले क्रिटिसिजम मात्र भनेको हैन, मैले चाहिँ यो पुरै एपिसोड यो पुरै सिरिज गर्नुको कारण भनेकै हामीले यो विषयमा चाहिँ हामीले सेक्सुअल एन्ड रिप्रोडक्टिभ हेल्थ एन्ड राइट्स इन नेपाल इन जनरल यस्तो विषयमा चाहिँ अझै कुराकानी गर्न सकौँ र सबैजनालाई एजुकेट गरौँ र आफू पनि एजुकेट हौँ भन्ने कुराले भन्ने हाम्रो चाहिँ एउटा द्याट्स वाट वी वान्ट टु डु. सो यदि यहाँहरूलाई अझै केही एड गर्न मन छ यो कन्टेक्स्टमा भने प्लिज फिल फ्री. द कमेन्ट सेक्सन इज अन. वी डोन्ट टर्न आवर कमेन्ट सेक्सन अफ. So it's on. So please add up. And Anugya, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything you want to say to our audiences?
No, I think that's about it. And I think just a reminder that wherever we are with our sexual journey, that's valid. And we just take our own times with it. That's it. That's it. Thank you so much.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for your time today. And the conversation will probably continue because I still have so much to talk about. So yeah, thank you so much for watching SEXploration. We are... all the episodes are available in Radio Nagarik's YouTube channel. If you haven't watched it, please do. We're also available in Radio Nagarik's Facebook page. And like I said, if there's anything you want to add up, please write in the comment section. Feel free. Any advices, any feedbacks is like most welcome. And yeah, until next episode, I'm Nishma Choudhary. I'll see you guys. Bye-bye. Have a nice time ahead.